Welcome to Victory or Death, a podcast for content creators. My name is Elijah, and I've got some new guys with me. Say hello to Cameron and Khalid.
Going, man.
What's up? You guys can call me Khalid, or my producer name is Iro.
Glad to have you guys back. If any longtime listeners remember, these guys both got started on my podcast back in season 1. So I thought I'd bring them back in because I liked what they had to say. Going forward, at least for this season, every episode is going to be about 20 minutes, and it's going to be a little bit more of a roundtable format. Today, we are talking about creative discipline. So while we're on hiatus, I had a third podcast idea, and it was really tempting to dive in and try to full blast do it. I sent out a bunch of emails to people to get interviews and all that, and I was going to pour all of this creative energy into doing this third podcast, and my wife kind of stopped me and was like, hey, it's a good idea, but do you have to do a third podcast? And that kind of reminded me that I have this tendency to basically just jump into whatever idea is really good, and I don't pay much mind to what I'm going to be abandoning. And I think that that's something that happens a lot with young content creators. They kind of get their first idea, and then they get another good idea, and they break off into that, and then they end up just rabbit trailing and never really finishing anything. Do you guys have any kind of experience with doing that when you first started?
I've done that. I don't know how many damn times. That's been like the story. That's been like the story of creating things as far as my little story goes. It's like I'll want to do, like, my problem is I want to do so much that I end up not putting as much time into one thing with, trying to do multiple things. So like Elijah was just saying, I have one podcast that I was doing consistently, and that's usually talking about life and just millennial stuff. But I'm a big basketball fan, and I would love to have a podcast or be on a podcast where I could talk basketball. At the same time, I also really love music, and I kind of have a podcast which is, I guess, on hiatus until further notice, where I was talking hip hop and I was interviewing artists and things like that. And it's honestly, it's I can see it as a good thing and a bad thing, because it's you want to do so much, so you always want to create something, which is great. You always have that stuff going, but at the same time, you're constantly switching projects, and that in turn sets you back, because then you're not making any big progress in one thing, but instead making little bits of progress in everything, and that can be detrimental. Does that make sense?
So yeah, a big thing for me, I'm just like you guys. When I started, I wanted to do everything. I was like, oh, I could do a movie podcast, and I like music. I can do a music podcast. I can do a programmer podcast, whatever. But then the one thing that came back for me was the context switching for that kind of stuff is too much for it's not just that you're running for a podcast, it's the minutia that goes along with it. It's it's not just you're recording the episodes. You have to if they're going to be separate social medias, you got to maintain them, you got to run everything in the background, it becomes a multi-person thing. But what I got lucky with is the show I settled on was I probably did a bad thing in terms of building a consistent audience, which was instead of choosing a specific topic or theme, I started with a concept, which was I always wanted to focus on the nitty gritty of things. And so basically it made me try to create a episode format that was generic, or I guess agnostic enough, that it could fit any concept. So I could keep having get to talk to really smart creative people like Elijah, and now you, Khalid, where I get to bring them on my show and I can kind of make it about anything. But it goes back to that I needed this like singular channel, and I needed to keep bringing myself back to that. And so, Elijah, just like you, I was fortunate enough that even though I wanted to do all these ideas, I had a lot of friends, and my own spouse gave me the feedback of, yeah, Cameron, you could do like 18 podcasts and that probably would be fine, but just stick to what you're already doing. It's a good thing. You're kind of like, you're finding your groove. Because the thing is, like, what you never realize is when you go deep into that creative outlet, you can really find the, for lack of a better word, the things you never knew you should be looking for, like making those friends like you guys, getting to learn more about what makes good audio. Apparently whatever that creak was not good audio, and just learning the like minutia of things that you're never going to find in a YouTube video, or even when like other people are trying to break down their flow.
Yeah, exactly. Because the benefit to sticking with a thing and finishing a project, you know, even if it goes on hiatus after, you know, let's just say 10 episodes, right? Like, you have developed a work ethic for those 10 episodes, and you've developed a formula, and that's what teaches you what your work ethic is like, and that's what teaches you how to make better content. And if you're constantly stopping and starting with new formats or new topic ideas, you're constantly hitting the reset button trying to find something that's going to capture that creative spark or like that zeitgeist. And if you're only chasing that, you're not necessarily going to constantly be making a viable product, because you're always going to be kind of resting on your back foot.
I was gonna say it's a big thing of trial and error. You know what I mean? Like, it's you're doing all these things, and like I said, like you're trying all these things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. I mean, it could be a good thing and a bad thing, like I said, because you could go through all that and figure out, oh well, I like the thing that I did with this one, I like the thing I did with that one, and then you can kind of put them all together. But like I said, if you're just trying stuff for the sake of trying it, then it's gonna go to waste versus like knowing what you're aiming for.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
It's trial and error. I like this, you know, and you're I feel like that's for people who are still trying to figure out like what it is they really would sit and be able to like, or at least when it comes to podcasts, for example, like being able to sit and talk about this one specific thing for hours and be able to consistently create for it. Because like, for example, like, yeah, like a podcast where you're talking to different like artists, right? You know, you have to be able to consistently get people on your show, and at times that may not be the case. Whereas if you're talking sports, there's always something to talk about. You know what I mean? So you're always able to create something. It's easier to interact with people because so many people watch. But like, you know what I mean? It's trying to find that thing that sticks.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I think actually it goes back to what Elijah said at the top of the episode, which was discipline. Because if you think about it, like from your favorite sports team, or from your like favorite MVP player to your favorite podcaster to YouTuber, like a lot of the time, unless they started in like an NPR or in like television or something, those people didn't know what they were doing when they started out. You, me, everyone who's ever like started a small time podcast or whatever that was getting bigger, or even the guys who've really taken off, they basically just like, I'm just going to do an episode, and then next week I'm going to do another one, and it's just like they keep showing up, and this weird balance has to happen where like the most important thing is you have to show up. And you're right, it can be a problem of I can't find an artist this week or whatever, but then you're suddenly faced with, well, I need to make an episode this week or this month, and I don't have an artist, so what can I do? And it's just the fact that you keep showing up every single week, and every single time you do it, you'll realize, oh, maybe I can cut this segment. Maybe I can tweak this. Maybe if I play with the audio here, or you just start noticing the problems or the things that work that you can iterate on. And that's like, I think the one thing everyone, especially when they're starting out in content creation, freaking hates to hear is that it's just showing up. There's no like getting famous overnight, because those dudes, they were probably floundering in obscurity for a good while before anyone realized they were making that kind of stuff.
Even not only that, just that, but it's that's luck. That's 1 in a million. You know what I mean? It's like people can go. I mean, I know someone personally who went viral off of a video. Now he's doing stuff for Ellen, and it was just off of one video that he randomly made. That was just for his friend. So
He showed up.
Yeah, and that's a extremely lucky case. You know what I mean? Like that's like I said, that's that's lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? Like
Hang on, I want to ask a clarifying question, which is: are you saying he made just one video and Ellen was like, "This guy's amazing, I need him," or
literally,
was it he made a series of
no,
videos and one of them just blew up?
no, he made one video.
That is
Right. Well, he should
lucky.
go play the lottery.
Yeah, he literally he literally when he was telling the story, he literally made one video, and it was just like it was what is it, like, you know how they have those cooking like little shorts or whatever. So he was kind of just like reacting to it, and he was making the video for a friend of his, and then it just went on the internet and it went viral, and next thing you know, he's now doing stuff for Ellen and a bunch of other stuff, and life looks good. But it's, I mean, he wasn't at it. It was just he just happened to make something that caught fire. And once again, that is a extremely, like, everybody wants that. They immediately want that. They see other people doing it and they're like, oh, this happened to him. Why can't it happen to me?
Actually, this goes back to a second piece that I think is it's part of discipline, but it's actually not as easy to represent. That I think a lot of people are like, I'll just make the thing and the likes and whatever will come. But another part, like you said, it kind of goes to that luck, where
Yeah.
you can have dumb luck or you can understand how to get your content out there. Because that's
Yeah.
another thing, is like Ellen didn't just like decide to open a random web page on the internet and boom, his video's there, and she's like, boom, this guy. And I realized we're probably telling an overly reductive version of the incredibly complicated way his thing A went viral, B got noticed by the right people, C got him in the right room, D got him to be likable enough that E, someone on Ellen's show was like, this guy, we should probably bring him in and talk to him and get him in here. There's a whole chain there that's easy to overlook. Like the biggest thing is you're showing up. You're first of all making yourself known as, this is the guy who does that podcast, and regardless of how good or bad that goes, that is recognition until the point where ideally someone somewhere is going to notice you, or maybe you just do it because you love it, and it doesn't have to matter whether or not you get big or not, as long as you're doing the thing that you feel comfortable showing up every week doing.
If you're enjoying this episode, please leave an honest rating for us wherever you're listening from. Also, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and join our subreddit to talk about the latest episodes or ask for help on your content creation journey. All those links can be found in the show notes. Without further ado, let's get back to the episode. Right, yeah, and I think the big thing here is that, like, it's okay for, like, the very beginning to kind of have that discovery period where you're trying things and you're kind of, oh, we're going to try this episode this way and do this episode this way, and like try to feel out what works. But after that, it's the iterating. And I think doubling down on iteration is always going to be beneficial, even if it sucks. Or at least even if it feels bad, because it's kind of like a hit to your pride to be like, that didn't go so well. And it makes you want to kind of like toss it away because you're thinking of those people who did magically, quote unquote, strike while the iron was hot. But that's not necessarily going to help those people. Like, it worked out for the guy in Ellen, but like, if you think of some people who like went viral, they didn't know what to do with it afterwards. They like tried to make the same thing because they were like, oh, well, this is what people like. But then it turns out that they needed to iterate on the idea and they didn't necessarily know how.
Yeah.
So if you're not striking that iron while it's hot, it's better to take the time to iterate and get everything down to a very precise science that you know works, that you're confident producing, and that you know is good, because then you can start focusing on getting big. Because if you put getting big before cart and the horse, like all of that stuff, it's not gonna work. You're gonna like have your 10-second flash in the pan and then it's over.
Like that's going back to your discipline thing, man. It's the question of it's not like you just made the video that goes viral and you're done. It's iterating. That those people who make the content that you show up to see on YouTube or even on television every week are making it every week. They've done this so long. They've been through it so many times that they know even if this week isn't viral, they don't care. As soon as they made that video, they don't actually care how well it does, because they're already on to the next idea, because they have to be on to the next idea. And yeah, you're going to take time to figure out what's working and what's not, but they don't have time to dwell on making just one good thing.
Actually, I got a couple points. One, just speaking to that too, it's a thing of damn, it literally was just right there.
Like you're a producer, right? Your artists, musicians don't make the one song and it's done. It's like they crank out tons of songs, and one might be a one might be a banger, a few might be a banger, but like the vast majority of the time is they have a lot that do not land.
Unless you're crazy lucky, like Lil Nas X, like that was the
He
song he
didn't
made.
make the one. He made tons of songs. Like Lil Nas X was out there
Oh, really?
hustling. And dude, Lil Nas X didn't show up on the scene day one and was like, "All right, Old Town Road, boom, we got a bang." No, he was cranking out. He was making ones like the thing every podcaster, and I know like the McElroy brothers say this all the time, is like when you make a podcast, record your first episode, whatever you want it to be, and throw it immediately in the garbage because it was trash. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care how good you are at this.
Yeah.
It was trash.
Yeah.
And then go do it again. And the second one, if you don't think it was trash or you like shop it around and you're like, this one not as bad, then you might like start putting that one out and that one out and that one out. But like no one starts good at anything.
Wait, can you go back to that point you were talking about people creating not because they need to?
No, it's how they approach the thing. Like you imagine your job, right? You
Yeah.
get paid to do something that you either do or do not like to do, but you're going to show up every week and do it because you're getting paid to, right?
Yeah.
The same thing applies here, but unfortunately, you're not always getting paid to do it. So it has to be something you love to do, and it has to be something you're willing to show up to do over and over again. That's like the hardest thing to do, is figure out what is the thing that Iro or Cameron or Elijah wants to show up next week, and still, like, regardless of how the last episode went, regardless of how the last conversation went, regardless of how I'm feeling today, what is the thing that like I get so jazzed writing about, talking about, working on, that it will get me in the door at my desk, whatever, so I can just be present for an hour and do something.
Yo, you know what it is? People don't want to put in their 10,000 hours. That's literally it. People don't want to do that. Like I said, like everybody's looking for like that one thing that'll just catapult them to wherever it is they want to go. People aren't putting in the work, and that in turn is like, oh well, this isn't working right now, so let me go ahead and try something else. Oh, this isn't working, I'm not getting big over this, let me go try something else. Like I've been a person that has slipped into that. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I've been like, damn, this isn't working, I'll try it for a little bit. And sometimes it's just because I lose interest. Other times it's because I don't see myself doing this long term. And sometimes it's really just like, oh, this isn't getting me anywhere. Everything is, it's nothing's blowing up, whatever. So I'm gonna try something else.
And Elijah, I feel like you can speak to this, especially is that process of, like, a lot of people think you have to get to 10,000 hours to suddenly be noticed or have anything interesting, but like that journey is where a lot of people make those friends, get noticed. It might not be 10,000 hours in, but 10,000 hours is the journey that's like the arbitrary number that gets you to mastery. And 10,000 hours is not a short amount of time. Let me bust out my calculator.
The 10,000 hour thing is intentional hours. It actually comes from the fine art world, where you do have to sit down and draw, and then like draw or paint, not just, okay, I'm gonna do a quick sketch and that'll be good for the day. Like really giving honest to God time to it. And you have to put honest to God time into how you think about your podcast and your content, even if it's YouTube or anything else. Like you have to put thought into it. You have to write that script intentionally. I mean, you might start off kind of just like, futzing around and kind of figuring it out, but like you have to put in that time. You cannot be a master. You can try to fake it, but people are going to figure out sooner or later. But there is a point to which there is a degree of quality that you can achieve before that 10,000 hour mark. I mean, you see it all the time on Instagram. People figure out how to make their crap look good, and it's because, or even sound good, and it's because that they've iterated well. But you haven't, like, you've just arrived on the scene. You haven't actually arrived as a master. You have to keep going. Like, none of us are masters at our craft, but that's why we're talking about it, because talking about it helps us reflect and get better. And that's part of creative discipline, is staying the course and not jumping ship for every shiny new idea, because you might find yourself more frustrated if you take the time to abandon a project that was going really well, and you arrive to the next place and it falls apart in your fingers. So stay the course, put the work in. Spend a couple hours a week thinking about it if you need to, like make notes, do all that stuff that I've talked about in season 1. But yeah, that's all it is. Stay the course.
It is hard to become an expert at something, but something I think a lot of people who've really landed and resonated with the audience have in common is they figured out how to be themselves. You every day are yourself. You are already an expert at being you and figuring out what facet of you people want to see, whether it's the person who's very introspective, person who maybe just loves comics, maybe it's the person who's very informed on a particular subject or has a perspective none of us have. That's always the kind of stuff that gets traction. Is anyone can talk about movies, but you talking about movies or reading books or doing whatever it is the way you do is what's often the most genuine thing that lands. And you'll find that in a lot of content creators is they just figure out how to be themselves. They're already experts at it. And the hardest part is just trying to get that way you see yourself out there.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today, guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.